Joshua Smith here, and welcome to the GSD Mode podcast. Now get shit done and smash that subscribe button now. All right, what is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with my good friend Ben Barber, and we are back. What is this, round number three?
Round three.
In this series that we're doing, all about REO and short sales, right? Just to make sure that you guys are prepared, have the knowledge, have the information, know the direction to go to ensure that your business, your real estate business, is recession proof. And we're releasing these series, a new one every single week. The first two, we talked about why it's extremely important for real estate agents, or at least in this is just mine and Ben's personal opinion and our belief systems. You can take it for what you will, but we both, to our core, truly believe that it's crucial for real estate agents to be well-versed in REO and short sales, right? Because that's going to be a continual leg to your business. Plus, when the market really pivots and crashes, which history always repeats itself, it's never a question of if, it's just always when, then you're prepared to pivot and shift. And we'll have links of this below, so if you didn't see these other episodes. But the first one that we did was on why it's important to get into REO and short sales, and just, again, have that knowledge base. Last week, number two, part two, the session that we did was, okay, well, now that you understand the importance and how this can impact your business of getting into REO and short sales, well, how do you get into REO and short sales? So we broke both those down, REO and short sales, and I gave our top strategies personally of how to go in there and get those accounts and get those types of listings. Now today, what we're going to do with you guys is we're going to break down the processes of each. So Ben's going to jump in. Ben is the hardcore REO guru who had over a decade of experience on the asset manager side, working for a lot of the biggest banks, financial institutions, and REO outsourcers on the planet, and has intensive experience from that side of things. He also developed a lot of the processes and training and systems that companies like VA and Freddie Mac and a lot of the big institutions use still to this day. So we're going to have Ben go through the REO processes, and then I'll break down the short sale processes. And look, you guys, with this, if we were to go in depth on each one of these and really do a deep dive training, full complete deep dive training on all of these, look, we'd all have to spend a full week together, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, doing an extreme deep dive on all these, because there's a lot that goes into each of these processes. But what we want to do here is make sure that you know what each of the steps are, because once you know what each of the steps, right, and what order these steps take place, and you have that list, that then will allow you to go out there and start doing your research, doing your due diligence, and start giving you the ability to go out there and know at least what direction to start mastering and learning this stuff at. So at a high level, we're going to break these down. So with that being said, Ben, stoked to have you back here, dude, with us. Truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy life to be here. It's New Year's Eve as we're recording this, so I know you probably have more fun things with the family that you like to be out there doing, but we appreciate you making the time, man. So, when it comes to the overall REO process, with those steps, just break that down for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you hear me okay still?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, I moved my microphone. I bumped the mute, and I didn't know how many times I bumped it, so I didn't know if I was back on or not. The REO process, and I know when we did REO University, it was a blast to actually put together the REO 101 training, because that was a training that I actually had started putting together for asset managers back in the day, and then it spread out to other departments within the outsource, like the closing department and the pre-list and all that, because nobody knew what other departments were doing. Everybody was just so compartmentalized. So we did REO 101 to say, look, here's the whole process. Here's how everybody gets involved. And it worked out really well to have that as part of our training. So for anybody, this is REO is real estate owned. That just means it's a bank owned property. You'll see that bank owned, lender owned, investor owned, just anything that's been taken back through through the foreclosure process, basically, right? It doesn't get into the REO world until that foreclosure sale has been complete. So once the foreclosure sale has been complete, now it's an REO asset. The very first step is going to be redemption and confirmation. So if you're in a redemption state, that's a period of time where the previous owner can come back and they can basically make the loan whole and pay off any past due balances, interest, fees, attorney fees, things like that. And if they do that, then they can go back into the property. So you're going to see redemption timeframes from typically 6 months, and then some have varying degrees. Like in Alabama, it was if they vacate the property, then they get a 6-month redemption. But if they don't, then it's a 10-day confirmation. So there's a lot of different nuances to that. But a redemption just means that there's time after the foreclosure that if you have the money, you can bring the loan back and you get the property. Okay. The next one to redemption is confirmation states. And a confirmation state is just confirming the foreclosure sale, and it's making sure the foreclosure sale was done correctly and it was processed correctly. So those timeframes aren't very long. It's typically like a 10-day confirmation if you're in a confirmation state. Most REO outsourcers won't send you the properties until it's cleared the redemption period and until it's cleared the confirmation. But you may see them. And so that's what you have to be aware of, because during those stages, you can't have any contact with the occupants. Okay. Now we'll go past that. So let's say redemption's expired, confirmation's been confirmed. You're going to go to the occupancy stage. I harp on this in REO University, but this is a good opportunity to just explain this to everybody too. One of the most important things you can do as an REO agent, if you want to maintain that relationship and keep getting more business, is your occupancy inspections have to be a #1 priority, but they also have to be done correctly. So I manage the eviction department for Fannie Mae and the rest of, I think we had like 32 other clients at Green River, but Fannie Mae was the biggest one for the evictions. And we were looking at our portfolio and we were seeing 40% voluntary vacates on our eviction portfolio, and we were seeing 9% actual lockouts from people that we had to proceed with lockout, and then cash for keys was like 25%. So we started looking at the numbers one day and we realized that agents were basically trying to clear that occupancy task just by saying the home is occupied. They didn't really know whether it was occupied or not. That occupancy inspection is what sets the pace for the rest of your asset and how you're going to manage it, and that relationship you're going to have with the outsourcer. So your occupancy inspections, that's the very first step. You're just going to the property to make sure, to verify, is it vacant or is somewhere there? If you can't get somebody at the door, there's a lot of ways that you can look to see if it's vacant. You can look to see if the utility meter's on, if it's running. You can talk to neighbors. I've had agents that will set a sticker in the doorway and then come back and see if the sticker's been cut or moved. You can look for cars, you can look for movement. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can verify, but that's the first step. Is if the home is occupied, then you're going to go down the eviction funnel, I guess. So with the eviction, you're basically going to service those out to a national eviction attorney. And then your job is to communicate with the occupant. That's why if it's a short sale that hasn't been successful, it's a great opportunity for those agents to become the REO agent, because you have a relationship with the occupant. You're going to try to get them out really with the cash for keys. That's going to be the first thing. Cash for keys basically is a payment the bank is going to give to the occupants in order for them to vacate the property on their own in a very short period of time. So you're going to say, we'll give you, we'll say $3,000 to vacate the property in the next 2 weeks and leave it in broom swept condition. Banks started doing this because they found that it was more beneficial to them from a time standpoint. It wasn't the cost of the eviction. The cost of the eviction is like $600-700. So they weren't saving money on the eviction costs, but they're saving money on the time that it takes to go through eviction, because remember, they have holding costs for every asset that they hold. So if an eviction is taking 6 months, that's 180 days of holding costs at $30 a day average, right? But it also protects the integrity of the property. It protects the bank's reputation. It keeps the home from becoming stigmatized and vandalized, and it prevents squatters from being, so like all these benefits that come to the bank. So they want to negotiate those cash for keys. If the cash for keys is successful, then you basically oversee and manage that. Back when Josh did it, you were stroking a lot of cash for keys checks and then submitting for reimbursement. And it's changed to where now you just process it through and the bank sends a payment. Most likely they would send it to you now, and then you deliver it to the occupant and verify the home's in broom swept condition, nothing's left behind. Because what we don't want to run into is, a personal property eviction after you've paid for a cash for keys, right? So you got to verify that. But the whole eviction process is really designed to get the occupants to move on in the best way possible. That's really best for them. Nobody wants to go to lockout. It only happens about 10% of the time. Lockouts can be very tough, but if you have to go to a lockout, you're going to have the sheriff there with you. And then you would have to get, some counties will bring their own locksmith. Otherwise, you'd coordinate with the locksmith to get the locks changed right away. That's the eviction piece. So the one thing that will be very beneficial for you guys as you go through REO, start thinking of it in terms of days in inventory. because that's one of their biggest indicators. When they go through and look at their portfolio, it's always days in inventory. And that day starts from the confirmation or the confirmation date or the redemption expiration date. That's their days in inventory. And if they've inherited those assets from another outsourcer and they have to go through any of these processes, they inherit those days in inventory. That actually affects their pay on the back end. I don't think a lot of people realize that these outsourcers, they get paid per asset, but if they don't meet their performance matrix, they may have to cut a check back to their client at the end of the year instead of getting one. And I've seen people cut checks and it is not pretty. But that days in inventory is a big one. That's why the eviction piece, the occupancy piece is so critical, because that can blow your timelines. I mean, I've seen people in eviction for 5 years. I've seen some 10 years on different parcels. So eviction's a big piece, but we'll move past eviction. So now the property is vacant. Either it was vacant when you went out and did your occupancy inspection, or it was vacant through cash for keys, or through a foreclosure, or through a voluntary vacate. Now we're going to move into the pre-list stage. And during the pre-list stage, you're going to be doing your property valuations. And so Josh and I have joked about this before, but this is back where I started in REO, was a pre-list coordinator. And I would call agents and beg them to get involved at this stage of the process. And it was always, please go do a BPO for me for free. And then the next time I have a listing, you can be the listing agent. It was, this trade-off. During the pre-list stage, you're basically continuing to set the stage for the rest of the asset's life, where you're going to go out and you're going to look at the condition of the property, take your property photos, do your valuations, look for functional obsolescence. Like, is there, a train track or a factory right behind it? Is there a condemned building in the area? Is the house itself close to being condemned? Is there mold? Things like this. So you're looking for any problems with the home, getting it prepared for evaluation. When you're doing valuations, it's a little different than listings. Rather than going out and saying, here's the value of the property now, we're going to always give two values. Here's the value of the property now, here's what it could be. So you have a lot of outsourcers that their job is to, not their job, but their focus is to repair properties. At one point, Freddie Mac wanted to repair 50% of their assets. So 50% of their assets were going to get new carpet, new paint, new light fixtures. So you're not doing major remodeling, but cosmetic updates. And that's why I love listing REO assets, because the banks have no problem spending the money to get the property in the condition it needs to be. And now you have an updated vacant house that you can just hold open houses and use it as a total advertising tool. That pre-list phase doesn't just involve doing your own valuation, but now we're going to start getting the property preservation company involved, and we're going to start our initial trash out, our initial lawn care. If it's in the winter, they're going to go out and winterize the property. They're going to change the locks. If the home needs to be boarded, they're going to board the home. But during your pre-list also is now gathering all the information about the property that the asset manager may not have access to. So you're looking at, are there existing code violations with the city? What is the standing of the property with the HOA? Are there HOA violations that need to be taken care of? The outsourcer will work on their end to look to make sure that there's no tax liens attached to it and that the foreclosure was done correctly. But they're not going to be able to get as granular as you are on the ground. Okay, so one of the big ones you guys are going to see is the water pass due, right? The water typically survives foreclosure and is passed on to the new property owner. So we've seen some very big checks for water. But during this pre-list stage, you're just gathering as much information as you can about the property. And the best REO agents that I've worked with continue to build their contact list as they go, so that when they get a new listing in a city, they have communication with that department, where if it is a code violation that's collecting $100 a day fee, they can say, hey, look, I just inherited this asset. I've let the asset management company know about this violation. We are going to have it resolved. Can we mitigate some of these fees? Can we stop getting some of these fees? And Eddie, who we talked about, is still doing the 60 million a year. He used to save me so much money. Like, he would take $10,000 fees down to $500. So there's a ton of value in being able to negotiate on behalf of the bank and get those fees reduced, because they see banks, municipalities see REOs. Basically like local governments see REOs as a cash cow, because the banks have money. They'll pay whatever needs to be paid to move this property along. But the pre-list phase is when you're going to do your valuations. We're going to trash out the property if we need to. We're going to clean up the property and make sure it's ready to go. Then you're going to submit your valuations to the asset manager. There are some companies that may have an absolute dedicated valuation department, in which case you're sending your BPO to them. They may have a BPO from a third party or from another agent. But basically, the asset management company is going to reconcile the values and then decide what is the property worth. We're going to have an as is and an as repaired value. And then they're going to look at it and they're going to say, what do we think the best strategy is? Should we repair this or should we just go as is? Most outsourcers will have a dollar amount that constitutes a repaired value. You know, some it's as low as $500. Some say if we're not doing over $5,000 in repairs, that's not a repaired strategy. But the asset management company, the asset manager, the valuation specialist, you may have a pre-list specialist in there. They're deciding what steps to take with the property. But like I said, anything that you do to the property, it's mainly going to be cosmetic. You're going to replace, and when cosmetic, I always think FHA grade. You're going to go in with FHA paint jobs. So it's not going to be a 3-tone paint job unless it's a high-end property and you would push for that. But you're just going to go in and it's going to be 1-tone paint. It's going to be whatever the standard is, like repos or FHA tan that they have. And you're not going to get hardwood floors and tile, but you're going to get new carpet, right? And if you're going to get a solid floor, most likely it's going to be linoleum because it's so cheap to put in. But you'll still have an updated property. Your job during that phase is to really manage those repairs. So the asset manager is going to approve the repairs, but your job is to make sure that the vendors are there getting everything in on time and that they're doing a quality job. And then you're going to take photos, verification, and send that back to the asset manager to verify so that those servicers get paid, so those vendors get paid. Once we're done with the valuation, if there's repairs, we'll wait for the repairs. If not, now we're going to go market. And one of the big myths about REO properties is that you can get them for pennies on the dollar, right? And it's possible to do that. But what I love about it is when an REO asset is listed, it's listed initially at market value, right? Like they want to recoup as much money as possible. And that's one of the driving performance matrix is net recovery. So the asset managers are trying to get as much money as possible. The banks want to recover as much money as possible. The advantage though, is that if the property does not sell, they make a lot more aggressive price reductions, because if they don't sell that asset in 90 days, they're going to lose it to auction or lose it to another outsourcer. So you'll see listings at market value and then aggressive reductions from there on out. So once you're listing, your job is really now to manage, really just keep managing the asset. The property preservation company, are they going out and doing the things they're supposed to, especially in the summer in an area where you get a ton of grass growth? Are the property management companies keeping the lawn clean? Is the property ready to show? You know, you've got to make sure you're not getting code violations while the property's listed. If you're in Josh's market or if you're in Las Vegas, you know, is the pool clean? Is the pool being maintained, or does that pool need to be drained and cleaned? Do we need to board it? Like there's a lot of different things they have to look at, and you are managing that asset daily, even once it goes under contract. But once it's listed, that's your biggest crux, is organizing offers and managing the property, just making sure that it's still in good shape, it's still up to par. Once you get the offers, I mean, it's not unreasonable to get a ton of offers. The most I saw was, I think we're in like the 50s, like 56 offers on one property. And it's a bit of a pain. I know that the one thing, I don't know if this is the right place to say it, but the systems are designed by great individuals who have been removed from the REO process for too long. That's the biggest problem with the outsourcers, is you've got really talented people creating your tasks and your processes and your timelines without experience actually working through one. That was my biggest mistake back as an outsourcer, is I hadn't been an agent in the field yet. So when I wanted wet signatures on everything, I didn't think it was as big of a deal as it was until I got in the field and realized how far I would have to go to keep getting wet signatures and correcting these docs and doing all that stuff. So that's your challenge, is that it hasn't been designed for your benefit. It's been designed for the benefit of the outsourcers. So offer management can be a little tedious. And in REO University, we teach how to consolidate offers so that you're not uploading every single one, and what qualifies as a real offer so that you don't have to just take every single thing that comes in. But then also on the listing too, is like making sure that it's listed correctly, because it is going to affect the agent performance if the property is listed incorrectly or if it's been on the market too long. There's no differentiation between your valuation and the outsourcer's valuation when it comes time to look at your days on market on the scorecard. So you want to make sure the property is set correctly, manage the offers, which means doing due diligence on the offers, and then just coordinating contracts just like you would, you know, on any traditional listing. So your coordinator could take over from that point and make sure all the docs are in a row. And the really good agents are going to know their clients, and they're going to know the demands. Like with the VA, we had to have very specific verbiage as the seller, and probably only 20% of the agents ever sent us a contract that had the right verbiage. So we had to constantly reject contracts, send them back out, get all these corrections. But if you know what you're doing, if you know what you're looking for, then you can input that information into the MLS, and then you can attach any necessary documents from that specific bank or outsourcer so that you're saving yourself some trouble. My advice though, never publish. So you're always going to have a manual lockbox, and then you're going to have your super if you choose to do that. But you're always going to have a manual lockbox on the property so that the vendors can get in. Never publish that number in the MLS. A lot of people do it and they get fired, and then they don't get any more they don't get any more listings. So make sure you don't do that. Okay. You know, really from there, manage it. Once you get it to the, it's all traditional after that. The bank is your client, and you know, you're walking through to get to the closing. The only other caveat that I would say, and I do want to give everybody one tip, is that if the property hasn't sold and you've listed it, you're going to have occupancy, you're going to have a weekly inspection where you're just going to go by the property. I always call it my milk run, because I know what I'm doing on that date. I know the right map to take to just get from point A to point B and make this huge circle and go check all the properties. And you're just doing a drive-by, making sure everything's okay, making sure it hasn't been broken into, the water's not on, anything like that. You're going to have, that's your biggest task. And then the second biggest one is we've got to do a monthly market report that's going to look at and say, how many showings have we had? How many offers have we had? What's the feedback? Why isn't the property selling? And then with that monthly marketing report, you're going to provide a couple more comparables. One mistake that I saw a lot of agents make is they would always give me new comparables. And I guess I skipped over this part a little bit. This is one of those situations where when you're marketing a property, when you're doing your valuation, they want to see active properties. So I know that appraisers don't like to see them. When I'm doing a valuation, I don't look at active listings, but outsourcers want to see those active listings primarily for their competition. But a lot of asset managers don't know what they're doing, and they value that property based on a listing, which isn't accurate. So you do have to combat that. But when you're doing that monthly marketing report, the best agents are the ones that say, okay, when I did my initial BPO, I said 123 Smith Street was worth X amount of dollars. It was an active listing, but then on my MMR, there's no update. You didn't tell me anything else about this listing that I set my value on. So the agents that have the best performance are ones that say, here's what happened to my active listings from the BPO, and they'll put those on the MMR. So they'll say, okay, this active listing is still listed. It's now been another 30 days. They've reduced the price to whatever. Or this one was an active listing on my BPO. It's now gone under contract. Here's that contract price. Okay. That's the value of the monthly marketing report. It's not just to get the outsourcer off your back. It's really to say, if we missed the mark, where did we miss it? And how do we correct it so that we don't spend any more time on the market? Okay. You were right. I mean, we could sit down forever and go over all these things. There's so many things. Now I'm thinking about, I forgot about the first look period for Fannie and Freddie, where no investors can come in for 10 days. And, there's a lot of nuances, but as a whole, that's the process. That's what you're going to go through. Managing the closing, they'll assign the closing company. There could be some nightmares if they don't have clean title. That was one of the biggest challenges with the VA, is that we would market a property before we had the VA on title, and we've lost some closings. I've had some people call me from the closing saying, all right, my buyers are they're in a U-Haul in front of the property. When can we get the keys? And we never got good title, and we had to go back and do a reconveyance. So that's a challenge, but that's all one-off stuff that, that doesn't serve the purpose of round 3 here, where it's just in a nutshell, as much as I can keep things in a nutshell, that's the REO process.
Yep, that's awesome. And one of the things, you guys, that's great about and why I love bringing Ben in these is I know REO to a very high level for the state of Arizona. But each state is been talked about at the beginning, some are redemption states. So, I mean, processes can be different,
Yeah.
state laws, regulations, timelines can be different. And, Ben's had experience in
Every state.
country, right? So,
Yeah. We've been in Puerto
we get
Rico
that
too.
great insight. And,
Yeah.
and before I jump into the short sale process, which just so you guys know is a little bit easier and not quite as complex, even though there are differences versus a traditional listing. But with REO, from a kind of a mindset perspective, it's like a combination of traditional real estate, like being a traditional realtor, as well as at the same time being a property manager.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to be, you become kind of somewhat glorified property managers, right?
Yeah.
Like, at least here in Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona, my market, right? I had to have all the utilities on my name and manage those. And, when we're doing those weekly property inspections all throughout the process, weekly at a minimum, right? Going through and flushing all the toilets and running all the sinks and making sure that things are clean and looking pristine. And sometimes you got to get your hands dirty, man. Sometimes these property preservation companies don't always do the best job, and there's weeds that need to get pulled. There's different things in which, I'm going to notate that and just maybe give that feedback to my asset manager if they want that feedback. I don't want to create more headaches for them, but I'm also, while I'm there, I'm going to solve the problem. I'm not trying to create more problems for them. I might want to have awareness so then they can go back to their vendor management companies and say, hey, like, you guys aren't up to par, right? But I'm not creating more work on them where it's like, oh, now they feel they got to send them back out. Like, no, I'm just going to go out there and take care of it. And there's so many times where I've had to send out my own pool guy to make sure that the pool is good. I've had to send out my own landscaper. And then cash out of my own pocket. Some of the stuff you're not getting reimbursed for, $100 here and there, but if you look at during the peak of kind of 2008 through 2012 period, if you look at just Fannie Mae alone, that one account, and that was one of 35 banks and asset management companies I had, that was over $1 million of GCI on an annual basis from just Fannie Mae, right? So these can be huge accounts and consistent money makers. So you want to treat those relationships like gold. So, all right, let me jump into the short sale process. And again, this will be a little bit quicker as we go through this, but it's important, right? So again, in the episode number 2, we talked about how to go out there and get into REOs, right? So you can be an agent for these REO companies. And I also broke down my 2 most effective and my current strategy for going after short sales to get those listings. Now, the first thing to understand is the listing presentation is different. In a traditional listing, you're going out there and talking about all your services and the overall process, obviously going through home valuation, and all of that, right? But in a traditional listing presentation, you're really just articulating in a hopefully successful way that you are the best guide to help them go out there and accomplish their real estate goals. Now, it's the same with the short sell, but their goals are different. Traditional listing, most of my sellers, right, they're going to want to go out there and get top dollar for their property so they can have that money to go out there and downsize, upsize, whatever, and play with that. A short sell, their goal is to get out of this situation. So instead of me going in there, my listing presentation, talking about all this amazing marketing that we're going to do and how we're going to get them top dollar and so forth, and it's not that I'm not going to cover what the process is for marketing those and give them an idea of what that looks like. But the vast majority of the conversation is educating them on the process of how a short sale works, right? Answering all their questions, giving them all the tools and resources that they need to make sure that the short sale process is the route they want to go down versus maybe foreclosure or the other options that they have. So it's a lot of education, and then also be prepared. These people are going through a hardship, man, and they're going through a tough time, and you got to show a lot of empathy and a lot of compassion, and sometimes it's a lot of listening, and so forth during these, because they're sharing their stories and they don't always have a lot of people that they can openly vent to. They might feel embarrassed or ashamed to vent to friends and family, right? So sometimes you become that venting person, where you go from, realtor to psychologist, and that's okay. Right? Just being there, showing that empathy, showing that compassion. This is a very tough situation that they're, it's a tough financial situation. It's tough on their ego, their pride, all of these different things, right? So that listing presentation is definitely different. Be prepared for that. Now, once we agree, okay, hey, we're going to move forward with this, right? I'm going to get all the traditional listing paperwork signed. And this is really important, you guys. Make sure to get with your broker, potentially your E&O attorney, potentially your local real estate attorney, to make sure that you also have any supporting documents, disclosures, and verbiage that you need to include in your listing paperwork and package. Like here in the state of Arizona, we have a special documentation that's included through the Arizona Real Estate Department that is included with these, but also there might be special verbiage that my broker needs us to add that extra layer of protection. My real estate attorney might want to have this added to protect not just myself, but also the client as well. So that becomes crucial, right? Make sure that you have that right guidance to protect yourself and your clients. But then in addition to the listing paperwork, you're going to need to complete a short sale package. So for me, I'm not going to make that listing active, and I'm not going to take the actual listing until I have a full short sale package, right? So just some items of what to look for in that short sale package. Look, the bank is looking for proof that they are in a hardship to go out there and do the short sale. Now, I have had short sales in the past where, dude, I've had the clients that are like, hey man, I got $1 million, $2 million in the bank. This is a strategic short sale. This is a business decision, right? I'm not going to recoup this money. This is strategic. So they couldn't prove a hardship, but then the bank still wants that data to sit there and say, okay, hey, would you rather take the little bit of a loss, or the loss as a short sale? Or would you rather take the loss as a foreclosure? And a lot of banks, you guys, they want to go the short sale route versus the foreclosure route because it does save them time and money, and so forth. But most banks are gonna, it's kind of uniform of what they're looking for, right? So the last 2 years of tax returns, last 2 months of bank statements, there's going to be an authorization letter that you're going to want to have the seller sign that gives you permission to speak to their mortgage holders on their behalf, so you can help navigate and get updates and guide them through the short sale process. And this becomes really important. Part of this education process with your sellers is letting them know, dude, like, sellers can screw up this process massively if they start reaching out or picking up the phone when the banks are calling them, and if they're not educated on how to navigate those conversations or what to do in those situations, it can screw up this process. So it's having that deep conversation with them and hopefully by this time, if you know the process and you educate them the right way, they trust you and they understand that you're the right guide and looking out for their best interests. But I need them to kind of stay out of the way, right? So I can do what I do. So getting that authorization letter, I obviously need all their mortgage statements. So banks, I need the banks, all the contact info for the bank, because usually on the mortgage statement, if you look between the front and back, you'll find the numbers that you need to call to get to the right department within that bank for the short sale department. Plus you need those loan numbers and so forth for each bank, each separate bank, and each separate lien holder. And sometimes they have 2 or 3 lien holders with those. And then you're going to need a hardship letter. Right. So the hardship letter is, and again, you can give them examples. It's not writing the hardship letter for them. This needs to come from them, but it's just explaining a letter coming from them, explaining their situation and why, they can't keep current, can't keep affording the payments and so forth. Right. So now that I have that package, and again, because dude, if you go list this property, you're going to list it, you're going to start getting offers. Well, you can't do anything without that short sale package as far as submission to the banks. And, I hate to put everybody in this bucket because I hate generalizations, because there's a lot of amazing, very proactive, homeowners that are in a short sale situation, but there's also a good percent number of them that aren't always the most proactive people, right? So it can be like pulling teeth afterwards, and you just lost a lot of money, time, energy, trying to chase this stuff down and maybe never being able to obtain it. I've had to learn this the hard way, right? So, this kind of shows me that they're serious, and then gives me the tools that I need to do my job, right? So then before I list that property, I'm going to also, just to start the process, I'm going to reach out to the short sale department for however many lenders that they have individually. See if I can get a contact, send them the package. A lot of times they don't want that package until they have an offer. However, I'm still going to try to get that process started beforehand so we can expedite it and so forth. Then from there, and this is all kind of, either right before or as you're getting ready to list the property. I'm also going to go to my preferred title company and have them run a title policy just so I can see all the liens, all of that stuff, have an open title policy, which also then, like, I like to work with my preferred vendors, my title companies that I know the short sale process, right? So then a lot of times can't always force the buyer to use our title company, but we can encourage it and recommend it, let them know a policy's already open, a file's already open for this, and, share the benefits of why it's important to go through that title company. So then I'm going to list the property just like a regular listing, start getting your an offer and or offers. Now, when I get that offer, you're going to need to submit that offer, the complete short sale package, the listing printout as well, to each of the banks separately. So if they have a first and a second, let's just say maybe they have a primary mortgage and then a line of credit, we're going to have to submit those separately to each of those separate departments. And at the top of every single page, you got to write that loan number, right, on every single page. And this is why I also like to have communication with them beforehand of, okay, here's what my package includes. Here's typically what I send through my process, right? Is there anything missing? Is there anything that I need to send you to with this to be more successful and allow you to be more effective and efficient and make your life easier, right? So I'm communicating with them, getting all of those together. I'm going to send that to them. I'm going to send it. After I send it, I'm going to give them about 48 hours typically. After I send the offer to them, before I start calling and following up with them. But then at that 48-hour mark, I'm going to start getting pretty aggressive at following up with, when I say aggressive, right, until I get them on the phone. And then once I get them on the phone, whoever I'm going to be assigned with, that short sale representative for the bank, again, I don't want to be an annoyance. Right. So I'm going to ask them, hey, how often should I be following up with you, checking in with you? We want to keep this thing moving forward and keep everybody updated and so forth. Just kind of get that communication out. For me, it's going to be, regardless, I'm going to follow up once a week at a minimum, but some tell me, hey, if you can follow up with me every other day or every 40 hours, every 72 hours. And here's one of the biggest keys, you guys, and one of the biggest mistakes I see short sale agents make is, look, it's a frustrating process. My quickest short sale ever was 48 hours, which was, a fluke. My longest was 2 years. Right. So this stuff it's called a short sale because of the short payoff. There's nothing short about the process, right. And it can get very frustrating for agents. And I overhear agents on the phone. I just hear this stuff all the time where they just start reaming the bank rep that they're talking to, right? Well, what's that going to do? That's going to get your file put to the bottom. They might, each rep is kind of usually, getting, 30, 50 new files a day, whatever that may be. I mean, they have a heavy workload for each person, right? Like, kill them with kindness, connect with them, right? Like, just treat it like almost like they're a client, just whatever of having that small talk. How's their day? What are they up to? How was their weekend? Hey, happy New Year's Eve, any big plans, right? All of that stuff, right? Because I want them to give my file TLC, give it priority and move that to the top. And then as you start doing a lot of these, right, you're going to then develop kind of a database for each bank where you kind of have your go-to short sell, whether you want to call them short sell asset manager, short sell processor, right? But you're kind of go-to person that can help you navigate these and develop that great working relationship. But kill them with kindness, man. They get treated like human freaking punching bags, and it's only going to hurt you and hurt your client. It's not going to help you. Like, kill them with kindness when you're doing that. Now, the other thing that's really important is to make sure that you educate the buyer's agent on the time frame, right? Average short sale is going to be probably someone that 4 to 6 month time frame. You educate them on it, let them know what your process is, what your experience is. If you don't have experience, you might want to leave that out into, right? But let them know that you're educated on this. You have a process. Here's what this looks like, and keep them constantly in communication, right? But educate and coach them through so then they can educate and coach their client, because you need to keep them vested, right? Because if these are taking 5 or 6 months, like, you don't want that buyer bailing, right? So keeping that constant communication, letting them know what's going on. Because a lot of times, even though they might have represent buyers on the short sales, they may not be fully familiar with this process. So it becomes really important, right? So kind of become that coach throughout the whole process. Now, it's very common that your first offer isn't the offer that actually closes on the property, right? I mean, I get it, dude. The buyer knows up front it's going to be 4 to 6 months. They say they're cool with waiting, whatever. They get antsy. 30 days into this, they're like, screw this. Let's start looking at other options. They find another property, in that case, keep working that file, right? Because there's a lot of times that the buyer might say, I don't know, right? They might be acting and verbally stating that they're not vested. But then we get that approval, we reach back out to them, and we're able to pull them back in, right? But then also, even if they go out there and buy another property, now what's going to happen is the bank is then going to come back at you with a pre-approved short sale price. So even if that buyer bails, now you have a pre-approved short sale price in their system. So this might be their counter, whether it's an acceptance of that offer or a counter. At least you now know what the bank's terms are, which then when you remarket it, get that next offer, that can take that process down to 30 days to 6 weeks, or maybe 2. It can cut the process in half and allow you to have a lot of success that second time around, right? Plus you're able to communicate with the buyer's agent that you already have an approved short sale price, and so forth. And it can allow you to have that much more success with it. So short sales though, because the homeowners are picking the agent and so forth. Again, it's a lot more like traditional real estate than REO is. However, again, there's that negotiations and some special things with the process because it is a short sale. So kind of those are the main tips there. And the last thing I just want to lead with, again, I know I already said this, but it's so important. Make sure that you are getting with your broker, getting potentially if your broker might have a ton of experience in these as a broker and so forth, and already have everything in place, for that protection. If not, it's probably a good idea to have your broker or you and your broker sit down and talk to your guys' E&O attorney, a real estate attorney, and so forth, and just make sure that you have the right verbiage, right, that everything is on the up and up to protect you and the short sale, your short sale client and so forth. That you're not misleading them, misguiding them, because look, in some situations, in some scenarios, if the bank doesn't sign off and release them of some of the short sale tax implications or so forth, like I'm always making sure that there's multiple areas that the seller signing that. They were highly encouraged, highly recommended by the real estate professional to seek legal advice from a legal professional and tax advice from a tax professional, right, on the implications of this and so forth, so that they're prepared for it. And because like let's just say it's $100,000 short that the bank takes. Well, if things aren't done in a very specific way, or the bank just may not agree to release them of that, right? They might end up getting showing that 100 grand short as income that now they're having to pay, $30,000 of taxes on, and right. And if they get hit with that as a huge surprise and are unaware of it and didn't have that knowledge of that and weren't able to have the knowledge to make their best information, boom, you're going to wind up in court. They're going to come after you, right? So all of those things. Now, all that can be, I'm not saying that to scare you guys, right? Because again, all of it can be avoided through, getting the right information, having the right disclosures, having the right verbiage, educating them in the right way, giving them the right advice. So then all of that, so they have all of that data, all that knowledge, it's been signed off, been initialed, right? So they're acknowledging that, they're taking responsibility for their decision in this scenario, right? So becomes really important. So, with this, you guys, again, we're going to continue pumping these out each week, just giving more tips on these to help educate you in the best way possible to have success with short sales, REOs, and so forth, in your business, because they're more likely than not that there is going to be a market crash coming here in the more near future. Who knows? It's all speculation at this point. None of us have a crystal ball, but we want to be prepared. And without a market crash, people are always experiencing hardship. So there's a lot of REO and a lot of short sales that are taking place right now that you can add this leg to your business and give you a chance to go out there and serve and help and support more people. But if you guys are looking for extreme in-depth advanced training on all of these processes from A to Z, Ben and I created a program called REO University. We'll have, wherever you're watching or listening to this, we're going to have links below where you can go check it out. We have some videos on it and a bunch of information so you know exactly what's included, what it's all about, and so forth. And then we also give you a promo code in the description below that's going to save you guys $500 to make it super affordable, super cheap for you guys to jump in this program. But it's everything from A to Z when it comes to REO and short sales, everything that Ben and I know. It's kind of like all the knowledge, everything that from our massive years of experience with this, packaged into a product and organized in such a way where we walk you through it step by step, where you can gain, you can truly master this process and have huge success with it. So that's all below. Make sure to check that out. And as always, Ben, I truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here with us, man. This has been awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun. Good stuff. Yeah. Thank you for having me, man.
100%, my friend. And for those that are watching and listening, as always, we truly appreciate you guys' support. Truly appreciate you being here. Keep up the amazing work. Keep crushing it. Keep kicking ass. And we'll see you next time. Peace.
Hey, guys.
I hope you enjoyed this GSD Mode podcast episode. Now make sure you get shit done and smash that subscribe button now.